Hi everyone, and welcome to JIMI 101 video. In this video we're going to be going over creating your first conduct and then also creating your first flow. So hopefully at this point you've already got JIMI installed and ready to go. If not, we've got documentation on how to get that set up, so I'd advise looking at that first. But once you've got JIMI set up, you should be able to log in. So I'm going to log in now with the root user. The first page we'll come to is a status page. This won't have much on it at the moment if this is a brand new system. But what we're looking for is the conducts page, which is in the tab up here. So once we're on the conducts page, we're going to have to create a conduct. Now a conduct is essentially the container for your JIMI flow. And the way to do that is just click the little plus here. And we'll just give this a name, so my first conduct. You can give it a description if you want. I'll leave this blank for now. And then just click the create button. Now what you'll see is we have this entry now in the conducts page. You can see the name of the conduct there. To open up the conduct, all you've got to do is just click on the name and that will open up another blank page for you. So now that we're in our conduct, what we want to do is add some objects to it. So to add objects to the conduct, all we need to do is go up to the little plus button again here and click it. And this will open up another box called Create New Object. What this allows us to do is go through a drop-down list of all the potential objects that we can add into a JIMI flow. Now, there are no extra plugins installed on JIMI, but if you do, you will find them appearing here as well. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to start with adding a trigger object. A trigger object in JIMI is essentially a scheduled task, and there's a number of different options that we can modify here. So by double-clicking on it, I'm opening up a context menu for this object. Once we've opened up the Object Properties panel, you'll see that there's quite a large number of options that we can modify here. We don't need to worry about most of these for now, and there's really only 3 that we're concerned about. The first of these is the name. As you might have guessed, this is just the name of the object. So in this case, I'm just going to call this my first trigger. You'll notice that if I save this object now by clicking the Save button down here, that this is reflected within the flow. A name should be kind of obvious to what the object does, but really it's up to you what you want to call it. The next bit that we'll modify is schedule. Schedule is how you define how often the trigger is executed. This can be done in a number of different formats, and this is in our documentation online, which I'd recommend looking at as well beside this video. But in this case, we're just going to use a simple schedule of 10s for 10 seconds. What this will mean that when I've saved this and enabled it, which I'll show in a second, the trigger will run every 10 seconds. So as I mentioned, I'm also going to tick the enabled box. This means that the object will actually do things. If this isn't ticked, the object won't ever be scheduled by the JIMI system. So now that I've done that and set the schedule, I can save the box again. I can also press Ctrl S on my keyboard to save as a keyboard shortcut. Great, so we've enabled our trigger and we've set a schedule for 10 seconds. You'll notice that there's a couple of numbers above the name of the trigger object. You'll also see that it's just gone green. That signifies that the trigger is executing or has just executed. The numbers at the top represent 2 things. The first part of this number, the 1, represents the system this trigger is executed on. Because I only have one system, this will always be 1. However, if you have multiple systems running at the same time, this could be any number. This helps you know where the trigger is based running on which system. The 2 after the decimal represents which core of your CPU this trigger is running on. So not only does it define which system, but also which core within the CPU. The final number represents the cluster set. The cluster sets are a way of grouping triggers together to make sure that they don't run on separate systems. If they're set to 0, they can run on any system. However, if you set it, for example, to 1, it would make sure that all triggers with a cluster set ID of 1 would run on the same system. This doesn't have to be system 1, it could be system 4, 1, 7, anything, but they will always run on the same system. So we've created our first trigger. Now we want to create our first action. So again, I'll go up to the Create New Object box here and I'll type in action to find the appropriate object. And once I've selected that, I will click Create. You'll notice this brings action into the center of the page again. So I'll move this slightly over to the right. Next, we'll want to edit the action similar to how we edited the trigger. Again, I can just double click on this, or I can right click and click Edit. This will bring up a slightly smaller box. You'll notice there's less options in here than the trigger. This is just because the action inherently has less options set to it. However, if you've installed some plugins will use action as their parent, and you'll find that you'll have these options plus a number of additional options defined by the plugin developer. You'll also notice that the action was enabled by default. For the purposes of this demonstration, there's only really one field that we want to modify, and again, that's the name field. So I'm going to call this my first action. Again, I'll just click the save button there, and you'll notice that that's updated within the flow as well. So we now have a trigger and an action, but they're separate at the moment, so we need to join them in the flow. The way we can do this is by first clicking on the trigger, holding C on my keyboard, and then clicking on the action. You'll notice that this has now created a green line between the trigger and the action. This represents true, and I won't go into this in this demonstration, but I'd recommend looking at the documentation we have available on conducts and link objects, which again you'll find in the main documentation on the repository. Great, so now we've got a flow built, but we don't really know what it's doing. There's a couple of different ways that we can see what this is doing, but the easiest way is to open up the debug editor in the conduct. So in the top right, you'll find next to the plus there's a number of other options which I won't go into now, but the main one you're concerned about here is debug. When we click this, you'll notice it opens up a new tab. You'll also notice this looks kind of similar to perhaps an IDE, where you've got in the top left executed flows, which is currently blank, data in and data out. In order for us to manually trigger the trigger and see the data going through, we just need to select it, right click and click run. Now you'll notice in the top left in executed flows, a black box with the name of the trigger now appears. If we click on this, you'll see that my first action appears below it in a grey box, but also data in has been populated. In here you can actually see what the trigger event passing through the flow looks like. By default, trigger just passes an event with tick with the value of true in it. However, some other triggers, for example the Humio plugin trigger, will do a search within Humio, and then each event it finds will be returned within this data in events. But again, that is perhaps outside of this video. Now we can click on my first action, which is the next bit in the flow. Clicking this, you'll notice that there's a lot more data in and data out. There's a lot of stuff in here that we're not really concerned about, again, for the purposes of this video, but the main bit we want to look at is inside flow data. And you'll notice that there's a couple of bits called action and event. Inside event, you can see the original event passed from the trigger. So this is actually the data that the trigger has passed into the action. You also notice that action has a result code of 1337 and a result of true. This is the default state that action will be in before it does anything. When the action is complete, you'll get more data added into the action part of flow data. You'll notice that result's still true, but now the result code has been set to 0. Our action's actually not doing anything here, which is why there's nothing in data and nothing else has been added. But in later videos, we'll show how you can modify logic or even do additional things within the action object, and this will appear inside the flow data. Great. So at this point, we've now been able to create our own conduct, build a couple of trigger and action objects, and link them together, and then have a look at what that data actually looks like within the debugger. Hopefully you'll now be able to create your own flows based on this. We'll be going further into some of the logic around flows and also some more interesting objects that you can use within inside your JIMI flows. But hopefully this has made sense so far. If you got any questions, please feel free to leave them at the bottom of this video, or you can join us on Discord where we're usually quite active. You can also create an issue in our GitHub repository if you've got any issues with our documentation, or perhaps you found a bug in JIMI. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.